Welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody. My name is Kasey Pacheco. I am the Executive Director of Nurses in Charge, and I want to introduce you to somebody so very special. And this person is going to be your right hand woman. Her name is Dr. Felicia Baldwin, and she is the Director of Global Affairs. So today, in this short clip, we will talk about a little bit about who Dr. Felicia is, and then some of the thoughts and strategies that she has on leadership and how you can improve your leadership in small little ways. Welcome, Dr. Felicia. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Kasey. I'm just honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as Director of Global Affairs. I am a people person, so this is fantastic. I'm looking very forward to supporting our regional directors and using some of my real life experiences to help propel them forward towards reaching their mission. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for being here with us. For any who may not know what the Director of Global Affairs, what her role involves, I will just give a brief story about who our directors are. So our regional directors, they cover continents. And in every continent, you have multiple different countries, which presents many different obstacles, such as language barriers, different types of nursing practice. And in order to bring all these different peoples and personalities, cultures together to connect them within Nurses in Charge, we really need people who are not just only passionate about the mission and vision for Nurses in Charge, but we need people who have strong leadership skills. So those who sit in the seat of regional directors, they may not have had formal training in leadership. And even if they did, it may not have prepared them for some of the obstacles they will face in such a large international endeavor. So what we have done is that we have courted this beautiful CEO of Nurses Take the Lead, where she has so much experience with leadership, and she is a resource for the regional directors when they face any difficulties or if they need any sort of training or just confidence booster. She is right there at their side. They will be interacting with not only nursing professionals through many different countries, but they will also be interacting with government officials on behalf of the nurses in the region. So we want to make sure that those who are representing Nurses in Charge, they are professional, they are qualified, and they have all the support and resources. So Dr. Felicia, as I just put a whole mouthful together, can you tell us a little bit about your background and experience in nursing and nursing leadership?
Yeah, absolutely, Kasey. I came into nursing not because I was expert and wanted to necessarily nurture. I've been in nursing over 30 years now, and many years ago, nursing was one of those professions that you knew you would have a job if you went into nursing. And the great thing about my career is I really grew up and matured and learned a lot of life lessons through nurturing and through the nursing process. So I began to fall in love with the ability to touch lives, Kasey. And initially, when I went into nursing, I really was just looking for a job that I knew I could get paid well and that I knew would not be going away, so to speak. But
Mhm.
here I am, almost 35 years later, and I'm more passionate about it now than ever because I've learned how we're able to touch lives. So whether that's boots on the ground at the bedside nursing, whether that's boots at the boardroom nursing, whether we're in dialysis centers, we're in the community, we're touching lives and we're always making a difference. So I became a registered nurse back in 1988.
Okay.
And before that, I worked as a nursing assistant and as an LPN. And so how did I come to like leadership so much is
Mhm.
because I was on the receiving end of not always having such great leaders, the toxic environments, the manipulation. And so I promised myself once I got more knowledge, more experience, that one way I could give back is to help lead from a healthy standpoint and to really support individuals really where they are on the journey. Because, Kasey, although we are a nurse, nurses have their lived experiences that they bring to what we do, right? And so we have to not require them to put their lived experiences, their truths
Mhm.
on the shelf to be a nurse. We need to really figure out ways to integrate
Mhm.
all of those sides of us so that we can really serve on a greater level. And
Mhm.
so for me, I've been director of nursing in multiple facilities throughout the country. To date, I have over 50,000 miles of travel to facilities. So I've been all the way up to Maine and all the way down to Brownsville, Texas, and many, many in between. And I have to say, I think Idaho may be one of the best in terms of their hospitality was a little bit on steroids.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
really, really like off the chain. But Texas, phenomenal. North Carolina, all the places I've gone. And what is unique in it, Kasey, is it's the people. It's the people that help us to grow and to learn. And that really is my story. I'm a people person, although I'm a bit of an introvert. Um, I love to see people excel and tap into their potential that many times they don't even know that they have. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
this is why we want you here. This is why we have you here because we have a lot of potential. We have a lot of young nursing leaders, both male and female, from many different backgrounds and cultures rising up, and we want to really nurture them and have them. So while you work with the leaders will be working to cultivate nurses in charge, to cultivate
Sure.
nurses who want to lead. Now, I want you mentioned something about being a recipient of leadership. Now, there is a fine balance because in nursing culture, I know here in the United States and even some places around the world, nursing leadership has tended they earned a sort of aloofness, a sort of cold I'm the boss and we are not going to cross these lines, where the nurturing of a nurse that we would give to a patient, it loses the feel when they get into leadership role. So the nurses who are part of Nurses in Charge, we always say we're a vibe. We we are like the
Yes.
cool we're like the cool club where
Yes.
we're just taking people under our wings and we say nobody's better than anybody, but we do honor the experiences that other people have. So with all of this being said, what are, we're going to talk today about some tips where we could keep that cool club. I love you. We're friends. We're brothers. We're sisters. That vibe, that energy that we have, that loving energy, while still maintaining a professional appearance, a professional, the way we show up, the way we speak, the way we lead, still have not compromising our professional stance when it comes to
Mhm.
what is expected and really anticipated from a leader. So
Yeah.
I prepared some questions here for you. So I just this is just a few. We probably will do more of these as the time goes on for the different communities that we have here in Nurses in Charge. But one thing that I realized that leaders do is that they attend a lot of meetings. And it can be sometimes frustrating because from on the bedside, you don't see why they're never there, but actually meetings and being in meetings is what actually drives the company and drives all the all the decisions that are happening, you have to attend many, many meetings. So how should our leaders show up for meetings? What are some etiquette surrounding meetings?
Let's see. So I would say from my experience, I do understand that having a lot of meetings can be frustrating sometimes because we are wanting to see more results and less talking, right?
Mhm.
But as a leader, we understand that there is an expectation that we're going to show up to serve and also to create space so that whoever is facilitating the meeting and whatever the agenda is, that we want to show up and give respect for that forum as well. And sometimes this is a lesson that has to be learned along the journey because for some of us, depending on what our background is, Kasey, what our style is, we want to get in the meeting, we want to get out. And so there's a lot of background noise in our head that's saying, what does this have to do with me? What does this have to do with me? So it does require, number one, an intentionality when you show up, that you are an extension of the mission, right?
Mm.
Because what that means is when I show up for the meeting, I am less of me, but I am more of the individual that is needed for that organization so that we can meet our goals. And so sometimes that means our personal feelings, agendas, this chatter in our head, we need to quiet that so that we can really resonate at a higher level so that we can really gain that momentum. And so what that looks like, I'll give you an example what I'm saying. Every industry, every organization always has a handful of individuals, no matter what the agenda is, they're always raising their hand with some kind of objection to something, you see? And that's the individual that has to really practice that discipline that right now is not about you,
Mm.
right? And being willing to put that you-ness of who you are aside to really tap into the bigger mission, because then that behavior, it becomes, Kasey, a distraction to the collective,
Mhm, mhm.
right? And so we want to put that energy forth that we are open, we're willing to hear, we're willing to listen. And because we are open and our intention is on point, that means we're willing to serve as well.
I love that. And I'm learning so much. I always learn so much from you. And I really love that where you said you have to put the you-ness aside and it takes discipline, especially when we're really passionate about something.
Yes.
But what
Yeah.
about when you are the opposite, when you do show up for meetings and you're glad when only somebody else is talking and you don't have to say anything because maybe you are introverted or maybe
Like
you
myself.
yeah, or yeah, you're introverted, you're shy, or maybe you think, you think, oh man, I just wish nobody would call my name. I wish nobody would ask me anything because I just want to hear, but I don't want to contribute. What would
Yes.
you say to help that type of person?
Oh my gosh, this is such a phenomenal question. I was participating in a meeting last week, Kasey, and I thought about this exact same question. And my spirit was a little bit in unrest because the facilitator of the meeting decided that, okay, so let's say, for example, Kasey, you've spoken already. We want to give everyone a chance to speak. So they're like, Valicia, what are your thoughts? What are, and really, if you are in tune and really a good leader, you would not do that
Oh,
because you want to meet your leaders where they are on the journey, not where you want them to be. So if I am having meetings and I notice, oh my gosh, Kasey doesn't really speak up, but I know she has a lot of value.
Mhm.
Myself as the facilitator, the leader, I'm going to reach out to Kasey before the meeting. I'm
Mhm.
going to get feedback from you before the meeting. I'm going to create a different forum for you to be able to add value to what's going on. So I know, hey, you know what? Can you just send me an email, Kasey? And how about this, this, and this? And so that what I'm going to do as a leader, when you are not speaking up, let's say another member is saying something, right? And I'm going to say, you know what? That reminds me of a recent conversation where Kasey shared the same information that they felt blah, blah, ABC like this, because what we want to do is always be bridging the gap
Mm.
because everyone is not going to want to speak
Mhm.
publicly or and we what I want to say they it's just not them, it's just
Yeah.
not them, but it doesn't mean that they're not valuable to the team. It doesn't mean that they're not willing to contribute. What it means is, as the leader, I
Mhm.
need to find other ways to get that excellence out of them so that we can merge it together. Yeah.
Yes, and I think there is also the cultural piece when you feel like, oh, somebody is talking too much now, or sometimes when you're talking, you're like, okay, I said enough. I should probably be quiet now and allow another person to speak. And then that's when you start calling on people and they're not prepared to speak or they don't want to speak, and you get into these awkward situations. Or you
Hmm.
have people who take the conversation on a whole different tangent, and you
Yeah.
get so far off what you were going to say that the whole group is on a whole different topic of discussion, and you're trying really hard to reel it back. So you have all these
Yeah.
different variations, should I say,
Yes, of course, of
in a
course.
meeting.
Yes.
Dr. Valencia, I really appreciate this. And this is a short brief about communication, but we have to remember at nurses, us, our family at Nurses in Charge, we're communicating not only different languages, but with different cultures, different genders, different, you know, just personalities. So some things that I say I recommend to the regionals and to the executive board, when we're planning meetings, we should have an intention. And I think
Mhm.
that intention should come through the agenda. And you should give people at least 24 hours to know what exactly are the contents of the meeting is going to be about. Something that I noticed that you do in a very loving way, and I'm going to share it with other people. If you get invited to a meeting and the agenda is not clear as far as what the meeting's about and why you should be there, you always ask, what's the agenda? What will we be talking about? So if you were a person, instead of muttering up to yourself and saying, why didn't they send me an agenda? Or this is too late. Maybe you could be proactive and say, what is this meeting about? What do I have to contribute to it? And is it even necessary for me to be there? Really taking the lead within yourself. So that's something I learned from you. I,
Mhm.
and then I say also, preparing, each person should prepare mentally before they get into a meeting to see, well, how could I contribute to this meeting? Is this a meeting that I need to contribute before my thoughts? Do I have something to submit? Or is this a meeting that I need to leave with a to-do list, an action list of things that I need to respond to or follow up on afterward? But really being intentional with the meetings. Did you have anything else to add? These are just some of my observations.
They're great observations, Kasey. I think you're spot on. Being intentional, and also we have to ask ourselves, why am I invited to this meeting, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm invited to the meeting, then I know that there is some expectation of some value that I'm bringing to the meeting. And so we have to take responsibility on how we want to share that value as well. So if I'm not necessarily comfortable on camera, and wanting to share it in that way, then I do have an obligation to at least get that data to you beforehand, or we can have a chat about it or text about it or whatever. But there needs to be an understanding that we are as strong as our weakest leader there or individual, and not that, and again, it's not fault finding, we're not pointing a finger, but we're growing the community to rise up to a certain level of expectation. So of course we want you to come prepared. We want you to come with an open mind. We want you to come on time. And if for some reason there's some emergency or miscommunication or whatever, then we do want each of us to take ownership of clearing the air and the space about that as well. And never, ever, ever, never, if there's a disagreement that you and I have, or we are seeing that there's a rough patch, then collectively when we are meeting, that is not the place in the forum to address that, because as nurses, we want to stay aligned with do no harm as much as possible. And that is harmful, because if I want to have the last word with you, and maybe my approach is a little aggressive or something like that, I have to be emotionally aware and intelligent enough to understand that my action is directed towards Kasey, but there are secondary effects that can hurt others who are just observing that behavior.
Ooh,
Right?
I
Because my bad behavior can be a trigger to someone else that is watching it based on their lived experiences, right? And so we don't want to take the stage and behave in that kind of way.
And that leads me to the last point that I would just touch on very briefly is our written communication and community forums, or in just in public as we're representing. So when we speak in a forum such as the Nurses in Charge community, we're seen as leaders. So we have to be careful that we're not airing all of our frustrations within that forum or within a public setting where we may be inviting guests or new ones. But as leaders, we want to make sure that we're holding a standard so that when new ones come in, we can hold them to the same standard as well.
Absolutely. I've had this situation where I've met with, being the director of nursing, the entire nursing department. And in some organizations, when we have that meeting monthly, there's always, again, a handful of staff that are saving up all of their ammunition for the meeting, because it's almost like they've been the hired hand to, get paid on the background to just like show up and show out.
Yes.
And I've had that multiple times happen to me in, like a town hall forum, and the person is just convinced, and like they're not giving up whatever their struggle is. And I found that the best way to deal with that is I usually acknowledge, Kasey, tell me if I'm right. It sounds like you're frustrated that we don't have enough staff, and it's really impacting how you feel as a nurse when you come to work. Is that right? So I try to kind of bridge that communication, because what happens when those individuals are using words that they know is very aggressive, perhaps not appropriate, at that point, they're really emotionally kind of dysregulated is what's happening, right? But the root and core of who they are is a caring person, but they are choosing the wrong way to kind of express it. And so because they have this posture of being so aggressive, I recognize that aggression with aggression is not going to work. And so I become even more subdued, and I partner kind of with them, because their mind has already convinced them on some level that I'm the enemy.
Yeah.
And I want to diffuse that with them. And I want to openly acknowledge, tell me, am I correct, Kasey? Am I hearing that you are frustrated because of this, this, and this? And if I'm totally off, tell me a little bit more about. And then I give them, just a little bit of time for that. And I said, you know what? This is going to take more time than I actually have to address right now. And it really is not exactly the right forum for it either. But if I made a commitment to you, Kasey, that we could meet one on one and we could talk about this, would you be okay with that? Right.
I love
And
it.
so it's letting everyone that's watching, the next group that has gotten paid to do the same thing next month, it's letting them know that they're going to get a dose of the same stuff
Yes.
next month when they try to do it too. But it's also, it's respecting the collective,
Mhm.
because when someone again is communicating in that way, it can be a ripple effect and contagious on innocent bystanders, and we never want to do harm in that way. Yeah.
Yes, and this is really extremely important, especially for our leaders to know about it. So I'm thinking even the chairs of the different countries, because when we grow and we expand, the more different types of people and backgrounds that come on, it really we will encounter those people who will try.
Oh, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I actually think our next episode, I would love if we can keep doing these little
Sure.
leadership pockets. And our next episode, we should talk about how leaders can emotionally regulate themselves, because some people don't know how to handle triggers, and when they meet aggression, they feel they as a leader, they feel as though their position is threatened. So instead of subduing, they want to fight back with a heavier fist, and that has to do with emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, which I think will be a really nice topic for next time. What do you think, Dr. V?
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, because a lot of times we interpret data again based on our lived experiences. And if we're not in tune to that, you're right, Kasey, we will want to add more force to the force that we are perceiving that's coming towards us. And then again, it's a lot of cultural differences as well. I sit on the advisory board at Benadir University in Mogadishu, and communicating, number one, being a woman, um, is really very different, because women leaders are generally not invited to a lot of the meetings, and it's more male dominated. And when I did a recent session, you can see in the audience all men. So the women are a little bit separate from the general. And so for me to understand and ask those questions, Dr. Heiss, culturally, how should I show up? What is yeah, so you have to be in tune if you are really serving, willing to be mentored in that way, so he can, oh, Felicia, for women, we do this, we don't do this. Please, if you would just wait until you are called upon. But so culturally, it's very different. And so we don't need to fight each other because we think it's a personal something. It's just cultural differences. Like, I live in Hawaii. I've been in Hawaii not quite 5 years now. And the first probably 2 years, I was like, what is this place? Am I on Mars? What is? Because culturally, it's so different than the mainland. Rarely, if you have, like, again, I'm meeting with whole nursing teams, and
Mhm.
I'm asking, hey, what are your concerns? How can I help you? How can I support you? It's crickets. It's crickets, because they're the culture here. They're not confrontational. They're not going to, in a public meeting forum, they're never going to put the real issues out there. But if you meet with each of them one on one, or you find out who the unofficial leader is that's allowed to, then you're going to get the real issues that are going on. But culturally, um, it just doesn't happen. So you have to work with different sets of tools to really get the real information to be able to serve them, because it just is very rare that publicly they're going to really address what the concerns are. And then from a cultural standpoint, I'm an outsider. I don't fit into their culture either. So there's a level of trust, and you've got to kind of be oriented in, almost like, like a fraternity or sorority. They got to jump you in first. And if you survive,
Yeah.
if you survive,
Yeah.
then you can get some real intel. So
Yeah.
it's not leading with our own personal agendas.
Mhm.
And like for me, I have the idea that intrinsically we all are good, but sometimes life just lifes us and our good doesn't come to the surface. And so it's my job to get through some of those layers to remind you of just how phenomenal you are. Yeah.
Dr. V, having you here, we're going to raise some of the best leaders the world have ever seen. In their own right, I tell each one of our directors, I say, you probably could hold a nursing revolution all by yourself.
Yes, yes.
Together, we are going to be powerful. And I just love bringing in seasoned, well experienced nurses such as yourself to really mentor and train us younger ones so that we can really show up with our passion, but also professionally. So
Yes.
I know they're gonna love you. I just know it. And I can't wait to see how your relationship is gonna blossom. But we will keep having these conversations and putting it out there. If anyone is listening in or tuning in and they want to leave a comment for Dr. V, please be sure to email. Dr. V is Valicia, Valecia at nursesincharge.org, or you could reach out to me, Kasey at nursesincharge.org. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here, Dr. V. Have a
My
great day,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.